what are they trying to test y'all on for the state test? There's 4 different sections of the state test. The first section is the state governance of real estate, the real estate profession. And what that's going to be is more like who's the superintendent, what's the Ohio Real Estate Commission. Um, uh, you're going to have to know like who can investigate, who conducts hearings and stuff like that. But on the state test, they're saying it's only about 4 items from this section on the test. 4. All right. So that's section 1 of the state test. Then the next test is going to be like license requirement, renewing your license, what it takes to get a license, continuing education and all that stuff. That's going to be, or putting your license like in escrow or having them hold the license and stuff. That's all in this section, license requirements. It's 6 items on that. So that's 10 things. We know it's 40 questions on the state test. So by far, license law rules of Ohio State Commission, right here, that's going to include 16 things. 16 items. You need 27 on the state test. Is it 27 or 28? 28 on the state test to get it to pass it. You got to get 28 right on the state test to pass that. So out of 40 questions, you can miss 12. Right? You literally don't have to get a question right from either one of these, and you can still pass the test. It'll be hard, but you can still pass it. So, what is the license law and rules of Ohio, or the Ohio State Commission? The reason why this is important is because this is going to be directly you practicing real estate, how you're going to advertise your business, how to advertise team advertisement and stuff like that. Um, your agreement with your broker salesperson employment agreement, your subcontractor. We'll go over that, but we won't go over this section today. We're gonna go over this one over here when we get to it. Commissions and fees paid through the broker. You got to know that. How to handle documents and record retention. Trust accounts like escrow accounts for holding customers' earnest money or other types of money that come into the brokerage or that you're responsible for. How to handle offers. So this is all stuff to do with actually practicing real estate right here. All right. Um, and so that's this section. And the 16 questions by far, that's the most questions on the state test. Then the last section is going to be just want to make sure I ain't missing nothing. Right here, this broker relationship agency law. And it's a lot of spillover from the national test. So we're not gonna go really, really, really in depth to it, but we want to just try to pick up the differentiations from this section from the state test from the national test. Remember, state agency is dictated by the state you're in. And so we're in Ohio, so this is going to be Ohio specific stuff about agency. How do we create agency and agency contracts? We talked about that in national. All right, B, license duties and obligations to the clients. Those are your fiduciary duties. All right, termination of agency. We talked about that in the agency, the confidentiality laws and stuff like that. Disclosure of agency relationship. We talked about that. Disclosures required when dealing with your own property. We didn't talk about that in national, but this is a state-specific thing, what you have to do. The unauthorized practice of law, acting like an attorney when you shouldn't be acting like an attorney or a professional that has like a designation, like a CPA or like acting like you're an appraiser or acting like you're an attorney and stuff like that. You can get in big trouble doing that stuff. All right. False representations of license, law, or expertise. All right. And canons of ethics. We're bound to this canons of ethics right here. So that's what we're going to go over today. All right. So remember, before we start studying, we got to know what they're trying to teach us on so we can make sure we focus on these letters. All right. And so we're going to try to knock out each one of these, and a lot of them we already covered. All right. So let me stop sharing that. Bring this next book up. Now, another thing we're going to do today, and I'm going to share this with you, ladies, as well. Another thing we're going to do today is going to be, let me see, what is this? Okay, I see. All right, another thing that we're going to do to talk about briefly today is going to be this stuff here. Agency math. I don't like teaching the math outside of the actual topic that we want because it's easier for you to get it. And then, like, okay, we talk about agency, and then 3-4 weeks later, we talk about the math that's associated with agency. This is the math associated with agency, commissions, selling that proceed. And this is what we're going to really go over today. Commission, selling that proceed to state agency. All right. And so again, we go back to our book, the PSI manual, and we go back up here to math calculations. All right. And it says right here, selling our proceeds is going to be on the test. Right. And it says, so that's really the only one that we're going to cover. But in this is going to be about commissions. So let me paint the picture for you in terms of what selling net proceeds is, and also how your commissions and like it's a lot of simple math in here. And the problem that I have with this is there's a lot of simple math, and we're going to go over a lot of math, and I'd love to know exactly what math is going to be on the test, but it's not that easy. So what I'm going to try to do is just show you, because a lot of this math is all similar. It's just asking you questions from different categories. So like, say, for instance, the operations and the way you figure out interest problems is very similar to how you figure out commission, because you're doing the same thing, but one, you're figuring out interest, the other one, you're figuring out commission. So we're going to talk about selling that proceeds. So what is selling that proceeds? And I wanted to go into this first because this is hold on, let me pull it up again. Is it this one? I think it's this one. All right, so let's find out what selling that proceeds is. We're gonna have Google tell us. All right. All right. Net seller proceeds are the amount of money the seller receives after deducting all costs associated with selling their property. This includes commissions, what you and I make to sell a property, property taxes, and other fees like closing costs, like title work, transferring the property, and stuff like that. So here, let's see here. So right here. So really the way I want y'all to remember selling that proceeds is how much it's going to cost for the seller to sell a house. How much is that going to cost? So let me paint a picture. Y'all both just got your license. One of you, well, you know a person that wants to sell a house and they're interested in using you to sell a house. Typically, back in the day when I started, I have a file cabinet over here with buyers packages, and I would have a package for sellers. And within that package, it would be all the documents that the seller is required to sign. But before they sign those documents, you got to know what you're talking about. And so before you even show them the folder and the documents in the folder, you're going to have a discussion. And the two questions that's going to be the most important questions that you need to answer is how much you're going to make and how much is it going to cost me to sell my house. Right. And then the third one would be, well, how much am I going to sell my house for? Most of the time, the seller has an idea what they want to sell their house for. Right. So you go there with your packet, and well, you wouldn't have a packet in these day of times. You would email them the packet and they would look at it via dot loop. But you still may have to have an in-person meeting with the seller just to go over stuff to make sure that they want to hire you. All right. So, um, what does that mean? You go there, and their first question they're gonna ask you is how much is it gonna cost for me to sell a house? That's selling that proceeds. And you got to be able to know approximately how much it's going to cost for them to sell their house. And you got to be able to convey that on some type of worksheet or some type of way to the seller so they can understand it. Well, if you don't know what's associated with selling the person's house, you can't tell them how much it is. And that's what we're going to do today. All right. And so you actually going to deal with selling that proceeds on the front and the back end of the deal. Initially, you're going to just give approximate numbers, but then towards the end of the closing, and say for instance somebody put an offer on the property and and the seller accepted it and it's going through the title work and escrow process, the seller is going to have stuff that come up that they didn't even know about. And so you'll have to figure out, maybe a lien comes up or something like that, or they had some debt that they didn't know about, and it's part of them having to sell their house. Well, you you got to be able to tell them, how much, it'll be probably different from when you originally talked to them. So what's part of selling that proceeds? These are the factors that factor into selling that proceeds. Expenses, the cost of creating. I'm sorry, I don't want to look at that right there. Let me just go straight to the book here. I'm gonna go straight to our manual, our Ohio real estate manual.
The old school.
Right. All right, here we go. Right here, selling that proceeds. So there's an equation for selling that proceeds. All right. So remember, put yourself in the living room of the seller of somebody's house, and they're going to ask you, well, how much am I going to make off of selling this house if I sell it, say, for $100,000? So what you got to do is figure out all the expenses that the seller has associated with the property. So one of the first questions I ask is like, do you have a mortgage? Because we know that we can't sell our house unless he or she pays off the mortgage. So they say, yeah, I got a mortgage. All right. So the mortgage, let's read this question now here. A home sells for 260,000 and has a loan mortgage of 200,000, right, at closing. The commission, your paycheck, and the other person's paycheck that brings the buyer is 7% of the sales price. And other closing costs is $2,000. Now, what's other closing costs? You got to pay the taxes, the property taxes. Now, how do they treat the property taxes? Well, you got to pay the property taxes up to the day of closing. So if we're closing tomorrow, I have to make sure all the taxes are paid up to the day that we close, property taxes. So that's going to be what they call a proration. We'll get to that once we get to finance. But that's going to be a proration of taxes. So, but the taxes are associated with it. All right. Um, and then like the closing costs, they have to get title work done. They have to give title insurance. They have to, the deeds and stuff have to be prepared, but I think the buyer pays for that type of stuff. But what I'm trying to say is that you're looking at the mortgage, that got to go. If they don't have a mortgage, great. Then you got to get paid. How much is that? 6-7% is customary in this market, but a commission is negotiable. So, but in this example, it's 7%. And then all other closing costs, that includes title work, that includes taxes, that includes if they're in the HOA and they got dues that are supposed to be paid, that they didn't pay, all of that type of stuff. And then the question is what is the seller's net? But the simple way to do it is, right? This is how I look at it. You get your paycheck every 2 weeks, say. You got a bunch of bills to pay before you can say that money that's left over is what we call, let's just say, extra money. There ain't no such thing as extra money, but let's just say it's extra money. So just look at it like this. I got my paycheck, I got to pay a bunch of bills, and then whatever's left over is what I get to keep and get to save. Similar to the seller net proceeds. I got this house that's worth $260,000. What are all the expenses that I got to pay off before I can walk away with the check that I know I've satisfied everything associated with this house? And that's really what selling that proceeds is, right? It's important to know what that is up front because the seller may not be able to sell their house without coming to the table with money sometimes. All right. So in this situation, and I copied this, so I'm gonna go over to a different screen. Let me share this. Oops. Okay, here it is. All right. So in that example is right here. I put it over here already before y'all got to class. So what we are going to start doing is, number one, we're going to make a formula sheet. There's a formula for seller net proceeds, and it's this right here. Here's the formula. Seller net proceeds equals sales price minus sales price times the commission minus other closing costs minus the loan. That sounds complicated, but it's not. Because the way we're going to do it is we're going to plug these numbers in our equation. Now, how do you do that for the test? This is what I tell people to do. If you know seller net proceeds is going to be on the test, you're going to have to try to remember this formula. When you get to the test site, write the formula down. Hopefully you've done enough to where you don't even have to remember the formula for seller net proceeds. But if not, you can always try to remember this formula, write it down. Like when I get to this test site, say for instance, your test is at 2, I might get there 30 minutes early, sit in the parking lot and just go over the formulas for the math. Everything else is done at that point. I'm not studying about what an acceleration clause is or none of that. I'm not doing none of that. I'm trying to remember these math equations verbatim. So when I go into that test site, I can write them down on a sheet of paper that they give me immediately. And if I can remember 3 or 4 that are most important ones, that's going to be real important for you passing the test and specifically help you out with the math section. All right, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to sit out there maybe 30 minutes earlier or the day before. I'm remembering nothing but these formulas. Because if you're a day out and you're still looking at definitions and stuff, I wouldn't go take the test. I wouldn't go take the test. If you are struggling with problems and stuff like definitions and stuff like that, don't go take the test. Keep it real with yourself. But so what you can do is, in the way that you remember the formulas, is just keep writing them. Keep writing them. Keep writing them. Write them 10, 20 times. Get a note card. So this is the formula for selling net proceeds. So what we do is it's called unpacking the question. So we read the question. A home sells for $260. I'm going to go down here. And this is how I'm going to answer the question with the test site. Sales price. $260. Next. It has a loan balance of $200,000. I'm going to put loan balance. Let's just put loan. $200,000. The commission is 7%. And other closing costs are $2,000. What is the seller net proceeds? This is your paycheck, and these are all the expenses that's coming out of the paycheck to equal the seller net proceeds. Right? So now let's make a little bit of room. Now what we want to do is take our formula here and plug all the numbers in. All right, seller net proceeds equals sales price. Right here. We're going to take the sales price from up here, 260. Let me move this down. So that's proceeds 260. So we're going to replace sales price in an equation with the exact number 260. All right. Then it says minus sales price times commission. So we're going to put that here. Oops, I'm sorry, 260 times 7%. Other closing costs is 2,000. And the loan is 200,000. Minus the loan, minus 200,000. Okay, that's 2 million. Now, this is one of the most important things I'm going to tell you, because you got to know how to break this problem out. You just don't get to start to doing the math, right? It's a way you go through this equation. If you remember back in high school, they had this thing called "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." That's the way that you work out a problem. And so I don't want to tell you, I want y'all to see it. So we're gonna go to Google. Hey, I'm in class. I'm gonna be done in about another hour. I'll call you when I get done. All right. All right. All right. So on my screen it says, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally" is a menomorphic phrase used to remember the order of operations in math, which is parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. What they mean by, let me just show you a video of this real quick. I want to show y'all the video so y'all can really understand what he's saying. This is a quick one right here. Okay, so let's look at this real quick.
Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. That's a sentence that we use to remember the order of operations in math. Let's take a look at that sentence again.
Hold on, y'all.
Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, and let's look at the first letter of each word. It helped us to remember the order of operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. That's a sentence that we use to remember the order of operations in math. Let's take a look at that sentence again. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, and let's look at the first letter of each word. It helped us to remember the order of operations. The P stands for parentheses. The E in excuse stands for exponents. M and D stand for multiplication and division. And A and S, addition and subtraction. Let's look at this now using a real problem of how we evaluate it. The first thing we're going to do is look for anything in parentheses. Well, we have 4 plus 5 in parentheses. So let's evaluate that to be 9. And the next thing we're going to look for are exponents. And we have 2 sets of those. We have 9 squared and 7 squared. So let's evaluate those. 9 squared is 81. 7 squared is 49. Next, we'll look for multiplication and division. And we have 1, 3 times 5, so we'll evaluate that to be 15. Now we have addition and subtraction, and if we have more than one, we're going to go left to right. 81 plus 15 is 96, minus 49 is 47, and that's the value of this expression. So remember, when you're doing operations, the sentence is, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I hope you've learned something from this lesson. Please like this video, please subscribe to the MathCat channel, and keep watching for more homework examples.
All right. So going back to here, you are never going to have to deal with exponents on this test, but you got to figure out the parentheses first. When you plug these formulas in, you figure out the parentheses first. So that's why I wanted to go over, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, because if you know that phrase, you parentheses, exponents, you'll never have to deal with it in this math. And then you go to division, subtraction, and division and multiplication, and then subtraction and addition. So I wanted to put this out here because if you just start answering this question, then it's an order that you answer this question in. So the first thing that we are going to do is figure out what 7% is of 260,000. And it's just taking 260,000 times 7%. Like, and y'all, you may not get this time, but if you do enough of these questions, it's going to be like, you're going to laugh at it, and y'all going to be doing them in like 30 seconds. All right, so look, let's bring up the calculator. And what we're trying to do for the first thing that we're trying to do is answer what is 7% of 260,000. All right, so I'm going to bring up my calculator, and we're going to work through this problem. And this is exactly how I recommend y'all do it on a test and just moving forward, working any type of math problems out. You're going to go 260. And this is a good video to watch over and over again until you really just get selling that proceeds. Or get you a video like that guy just did. It's a lot of tools out there. So you just got to find somebody that you can trust, that you know, that you understand. So we're gonna take 260,000 and just do what it says in the parentheses times 7%. It equals 18,200. That's our commission. We better know how to be able to figure that out, right? So it's 18,200. All right. So now we're gonna go here back to our question. We're gonna go to our parentheses. We're gonna get rid of this and put 18,200. Now we can figure out the problem. Actually, we can get rid of the parentheses now because we've already figured it out. So now it's a question that all we got to do is subtract. What's 260 minus our commission, or 18,200, minus 2,000 minus 200,000, all right? And that's what they did up here, all right? So we're going to say 260 minus 18,000 minus 2,000 minus 200,000, all right? So 260, and we just go get out the calculator. $260 minus 18,2 leaves 241,8 minus 2,000 leaves 239,8 minus 200,000. It leaves 39,800, and that's selling their proceeds. That's it. The answer is 39,800. So, ma'am, if you were to sell your house based on the information that you told me and what I think, with the commission that I'm going to have, that you're going to pay me to sell a house, and the closing costs, you will net $39,800. Right? So, because they got to pay off the loan, they got to pay closing costs, and they got to pay you. If you don't know how you're going to get paid, then look, if you don't, like, if we're not willing to figure out how we get paid, stop right now and look, like, figure out something else to do. I'm going to just keep it real with you. Because if you're not able to figure out the math that it's going to take for you to get paid, then you're not really going to be able to figure out any other math. Really, honest to God, just keep it real. All right, so the answer to this question is $39,800. All right, here's another question up here. I did this one. We don't have an answer to this one, but we're going to unpack it the same way. We're going to use the equation. We're going to go down here, get our equation. Actually, I'm going to bring it up there. So we can go down and get our equations, our selling net proceed equation. What I would do is I would make it, and I'll make it for y'all. I'll send it to you. Selling net proceeds formula sheet. And we're going to put formulas on this sheet and build on it. And every time we put a formula on it, we should be using that formula. All right. And so when you're doing your studies and you come up with a question like this, you ask yourself, what are they asking me? Okay, they said, what are selling net proceeds? Boom, a light bulb should go off in your head. I need to use the selling net proceed formula. And don't get away from the formula. You can get away from the formulas when you go take the test, but when you're answering the questions, you need to know where this stuff goes. Okay. And so in this question, it has something different. It has something a little different, which is the warranty. But I've already broken it out for y'all. So let's read the question, and we're going to unpack the question. A seller is selling their property for $450,000. Right here, I'm going down here, I'm putting 450. Now I'm going to keep reading. The agent's commission is 6%. Equals 6%. Keep reading. The closing costs are 2%. They didn't give us a number on that one, right? $2%. And then the warranty is $500. So let's plug that into our formula. Now we're going to have two equations here. I mean, two parentheses here, because they didn't, with us, them not giving us the actual closing costs, we got to figure that out. So we got to figure that out. We got to figure out what's 2% of the 450,000. And so we're going to say sales price. Oops. And y'all know this. I'm just doing it the technical. I'm showing you the right way to do it. Now we're gonna start to depart from this as we get more competent. We won't have to do all of this, but I'm showing you the right way to do it. All right. And this is gonna be times the closing cost. I want y'all to see it. All right. So that's how the equation based on that problem would look. We're gonna change. We added parentheses because they didn't give us the closing cost. So now let's plug everything in. Sales price right here, $450. Sales price right here, based on how we unpack the question, commission is 6%. Sales price right here times the closing cost. They said 2%. All I'm doing is using these things that we unpack the question with and plugging them in. This is 2%. And then the loan amount, there's no loan amount, but there is a warranty. So we're gonna write warranty here. I want y'all to see that. And then we're gonna take that out and says the warranty is $500. Sorry about the dollar signs. I ain't putting those in there. All right, so now it's time to do what? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. We're gonna deal with the parentheses first. So now we got to take 450,000 and times 6%. That's our commission. So we're gonna go back to our calculator. I'm gonna share that with y'all. And we're gonna do 450 times 6% equals 27,000. So we're gonna go back to our sheet and put 27,000 in here because we figured that out. We figured that out, right? Then we're gonna do this portion. 450 times 2%. That's the closing cost. So let's go back to our calculator and figure out what's 2% of 450,000. Clear our calculator, go 450 times 2% equals $9,000. So the closing cost for this deal is $9,000. $9,000. Now get rid of the parentheses because we figured out what was inside of the parentheses, and now we can do math. Because we figured everything out. So 450 minus 27,000. Let's go to our calculator. Figure out what that is. 450. 450 minus 27,000 equals 423,000 minus 9,000. I'm gonna read it because y'all can't see it. Minus 9,000. That's what the closing cost. Minus 500, which is the warranty. Those are all the expenses that this seller would have had if they don't have a mortgage on this one. So they're going to net a lot. They're going to net $413,500 when they sell that house. All right. So now let's look at this. Let me share my screen. I brought the problem up on PSI. A seller is selling a property for $450,000. The agent's commission is 6%, closing costs are 2%, and the seller has agreed to purchase a home warranty plan for the buyer. What is the seller's net going to be? Going back to my calculator, looking at the answer, it says 413.5. And the reason why I love math is if I know what I'm doing, it ain't no guesswork. It's 413.5. We answer it is right. Period. All right. Now, what I like about these is it gives you the equations here. All right. Calculate the agent's commission. All right. 450,000. They didn't actually even give you the equation. But if you unpack it and you know how to do it, that math is not daunting at all. All right. To calculate settle that proceeds from the sale of a property, subtract the agent's commission, closing costs, and any agreed upon expenses like a home warranty plan from the sale. In this case, the correct answer would be $413,500. Choice 3 is correct. Right, correct. Okay. Let's go over here and see what they say about this here. It's that question is, what affects selling that proceeds calculations? Here are all some of the things that affects that. All right, the agent's commission, there's closing costs. So what's the agent's commission? The percentage deducted for the real estate agent service. Closing costs, fees associated with the sale, such as title insurance and escrow fees. home warranty or repairs, agreed upon expenses that the seller covers, outstanding debt, unpaid taxes, mortgage balances, liens on the property, market conditions, factors like interest rates and stuff like that. I disagree with that. So, but maybe you paying a point for the buyer. Maybe the buyer is trying to get their interest rate down, and you agree to pay a point as the seller for the buyer. These are all like a little bit technical for where we're at in class. So, but these are the things that's going to come up, and you got to deduct those from the sale of the house, so you can tell the seller how much it is that they're going to make or they're about on their sale of their property. All right. So let's go back to that living room where you were sitting with the seller. You would ask them, okay, you would tell them, hey, this is how much I'm going to get paid. You're going to pay me 6%. Of that 6%, I'm going to share. You would negotiate that. Let me say that correctly. You're negotiated. You can go 6%, you can go 5%, you can go 7%, you can go 10%. It's negotiable. There's no set commission rate in Ohio. Most of the time I go 7%, unless I'm going to be doing business with you multiple times within a year. I'll give you, if you're selling 2 or 3 properties, I might put you on the 6% commission. But so you're going to say, hey, I think your house is worth $300,000, Miss Smith. Okay, of that $300,000, you're going to pay me 6% to sell your house. All right. Now the house is real nice, and a lot of times the buyers want a home warranty. Would you be open to doing a home warranty? Yes. Well, you already know how much the home warranty costs. Say it's $500. All right. The next thing you may do is say, hey, well, after your commission, you might say, do you have a loan? Or that might be the first thing you ask them. But you need to get an idea of what their expenses is so you can deduct them from the sales price and let them know around about what they're going to net. The 2 biggest expenses is going to be, most of the time, your commission, all right, and the loan if they got one. Other big ones are taxes. Typically in Cuyahoga County, the taxes range anywhere from 2.5% of the property value to as high as 4% if you get into Cleveland Heights and Shaker. So the taxes can be substantial as well. All right. But the 2 biggest ones is your commission and if there's any outstanding debt like a mortgage. All right. And I try to make that as simple as possible. And this is math associated with agency. Before you even get a contractual relationship with that person, you're going to be talking about what your services are going to cost. You need to be able to figure out that and then communicate that to the seller. And then what is going to cost them to sell a house, the stuff that you can't control, like closing costs, like the taxes that they pay, like the mortgage the mortgage and stuff that they got. So that's the explanation of selling that proceeds. And you'll get questions on selling that proceeds on this test. Let's see if we can find another one on with this. We're on PSI. So let's see if we can find another one. That's not a selling that proceed question. That's not either. That's not either. It's not. Let's see if we can find one. That's similar to selling that proceeds. This question is. That's a proration question. Okay, here's a selling that proceed question. So let's copy this. We're gonna do this one, and this will be the last one that we do. But I just want to illustrate how to use the formula on here. And I would do this until, honestly, y'all, I would do this until, because I need to just learn it. I just need to learn this for my competency. And most of the time, you're gonna use calculators. It'll be spreadsheets that you can create, but you got to know how to know the math. Because if you don't know the math, you can't make the spreadsheet and make it easier for you. All right. And that's another thing that I can do is like I make spreadsheets for people to make their life easier. And I charge them like, hey, this spreadsheet costs $50. It's going to tell you how to calculate taxes and all this stuff. So I sell that to people. That's another way that I make money doing real estate. But here's the question. Let's go up here and get the formula. Selling that proceed formula right here. All right. I'm going to put the formula down here somewhere. And we're gonna unpack the question. A home sold for 400,000. I ain't reading nothing else. That's for one of the variables I need. Sales price, 400,000. After deducting $10,000 in closing costs, okay, closing costs $10,000. All right. And $20,000 broker's commission. They gave us all of them. We don't have to do no parentheses and no figuring out. We're gonna be able to plug this all the way in. Commission. Or we'll call it broker's cost. See that? You see how the broker's commission and stuff like that, they just change stuff around, but we know what it is. We ain't worried about that. And that equals 20,000. Now, we're gonna take these variables and plug them into our formula right here. So we're gonna get rid of this right here. And we're gonna say seller's net equals sales price, 400,000. Well, we already know the commission because they gave it to us. So we're gonna erase this and put the 20,000 there. And then it said closing costs. There's no loan. So this is an easy one. 10,000. Closing costs 10,000. There's no loan. So this is easy math. We're gonna even need the calculator for this. 400,000 minus 20,000 is 380 minus 10 is 370. All right. So now we go back to our question. And it asks us the home sold for 400,000 after deducting 10,000 in closing costs, 20,000 for the broker's commission. What is the adjusted sales price? Well, guess what? We said 370 is right there. We don't none of I like all I'm looking for is this number. We're gonna select it and it's gonna be right. And that's the kind of confidence that we need when we're going to take these math questions. If you can actualize that level of confidence, this is, I guarantee you, if you can get this like this with the math, I guarantee you, you're not going to let yourself slip on any of the other portions. There's no way I'm going to know all these complicated ass math questions and don't know what acceleration clause mean or don't know what the agency fiduciary duties are. Like, that's it. So that's how you figure out selling that proceeds. Selling that proceeds is associated with agency. And it's before you even get the agency relationship with the person through the contract. The reason why you need to know that firsthand is because you have to tell people what you're going to make and what they're going to make when they sell their property. And it has to be within a reasonable amount of accuracy. All right. You don't want to be telling somebody they're going to get $370,000 and then it's a $260,000 net. They might not even sold their house. But you can't be held responsible for stuff that you didn't know that they had. And that sometimes happens. You know, you'll get into a deal and then you find out this person got all types of IRS liens that they got to pay off before they sell a property. The reason why the seller has to pay those liens off that's associated with them because they may be attached to the property. All right. And they may not be able to give that person a free and clear title. That's the whole reason why you got to get rid of those liens, because I got to give you, like I tell people, this sheet of paper is blank. It's nothing on there. When I sell you this property, I want my sheet of paper to be blank, or I want the property's title to be blank with no encumbrances on there other than the ones that's mandatory by law. Because I might not be able to sell the property to somebody else if you don't give me clean title. So that's the whole reason why you go through title work and all that type of stuff. So I'm really interested to know if y'all understand what I just went over and the importance of using the equations. You getting this, Jazz?
I'm sorry. I am. I probably have to listen to it over. It's kind of like I get the basics of the importance, but I'm still like looking at.
Well, I don't necessarily need you to be getting the math right now. I just want
just
to get the concept
Yeah.
of selling that proceeds, because if we understand the concept, the math is easy. You see that. And I tell people with anything in math, the only thing that you're going to be doing is adding, subtracting, multiplying, and then dividing. I don't
Right.
care what type of math it is. You're going to be doing one of those four functions or all of them within the same problem. But what I really want to have you understand is the concept of selling that proceed and why selling that proceed is important, and mainly that you have equations to figure this stuff out. And if you use the equations, when you see it, you will now know, okay, they're talking about I got 7% commission coming out of 400,000. That's the same thing as if they're asking me what 7% interest coming out of 400,000. It's the same math. One's just talking about interest, and the other one's just talking about commission. The way you get to the answer is the same math. They're just calling it something different. And so what I mean by that is this here. I'll go back a couple questions. I just want to show you. It was the first question on here, I think it was. Find one because it wasn't. Okay, right here. Let's just use this one. They're talking about a down payment. All right. A buyer's purchasing a $300,000 property, making a 20% down payment. Well, what's the math to figure
Oh,
out?
that one I could. That one a no brainer. The part overhaul, like that part is cool.
But
That's cool.
what I'm trying to show you is this this number and the math is the same, figuring out the down payment for your commission, for what the interest the interest is.
Gotcha.
You see what I'm saying? So you're
Right.
going to multiply 300,000 times 20% to figure out the down payment. You're going to multiply 300,000 times 7% to figure out your commission. It was the same math, right?
Gotcha. Got
Right?
it. Yep.
It's the same math. You're going to do the same thing to figure out this down payment as you are if you do commission, if you do the interest. So I want to find one with the interest just to see what how they say it. This is the same thing right here. For a home loan of 200,000 with a PMI rate of 0.5%, what is the actual cost of the private mortgage insurance? Well, what in the hell is a 0.5% of $200,000? It's $1,000. Yeah.
Gotcha.
You see what I'm saying? So we're talking about PMI, but this is the same math. So people think this math is like, oh my God, I can't figure it out. No, what we need when we get to finance, we gonna know what PMI is, but it's the same math. You don't even have to know what PMI is to know that the answer is 1,000 on this one. And that's how fast I want y'all to be able to figure it out. Just look at the question. Okay, the same math. I'm multiplying. You see what I'm saying? But the way we get to that is that we know the equations, because when we get done, and I still use a lot of this stuff in my regular job. Here's what I wanted to show you. This question right here. Same math. A borrower takes out a $200,000 mortgage at 4% interest rate. What is the amount of interest for the first month? Here's the thing. I'm gonna figure this out. What's 4% of 200,000? Right? It's 8,000, right? So 4 times 2, that's the real easiest way to do it. 4 times 2 is 8,000, right? Well, we know that's the annual interest rate. So if we were to get this loan, it would be 8,000 a year. Well, they're asking us what's the amount of interest for the month. So we divide 8,000 by 12.
Okay.
Right?
Gotcha.
We divide 8,000 by 12. See, this is a two-part question. Right? We got to figure out what the 4% of the 200,000 is. And then we got to know that we got to divide it by 12. Right? So once we divide 8,000 by 12, what do we get?
Oh.
Hey Siri, and this is so crazy, y'all. We got so many tools. Hey Siri, what's 800,000 divided by 12? All right. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Hey Siri, what is 8,000 divided by 12?
So it's gonna be 1. The answer will be.
Answer gonna be 1.
Yeah.
Siri just told me the answer. Easy
Yeah,
money.
yeah.
But we see what we got to do is when we read this, we got to unpack it. And then
That's right.
also what we got to do is we got to read the rest of the question. Right? What is the now these math questions are the only ones that you don't eliminate. It ain't no even close answers. It's only the right answer when you're doing math. What is the amount of interest paid on the first month? Well, we know once we do the 200,000 times the 4%, that's our annual interest. Sometimes they'll say something like the borrower pays $666.70 a month for interest. How much is their annual payments? All we got to do is take the 767 times 12, and it's going to equal 8,000. But these are not daunting questions, and some of these, like all I'm really trying to tell you, if you know how to do this, you're going to be that. This type of relationship between a percent and an amount of the sale or the loan or whatever is going to be forever through the math that you're going to do. So you got to be able to understand that part. Let me see if there's any more like this. Look,
So the
property.
big thing, Gibby, is like what you've been stressing is the reading of the question, the rereading of the question, the rereading of the question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I'm unpacking it. Cause now I'm like, okay, I got it. Cause I'm like, I'm not I only read part of it, and then I didn't reread it, or I reread it and I might be thinking too much into it. When just read it till you understand it just out loud.
Look at the math here. Buyers purchasing a property for $450,000, making a 30% down payment. I'm gonna do sales price. I'm gonna do down payment. The loan origination fee is 2%. I'm gonna do 2%. How much would a buyer need to finance the fee? How much would a buyer need to finance, including the fee? Okay, so I'm just doing math because y'all getting it. But in this question, that's the question. So 450,000 sales price. So what's going to happen is you're going to immediately, as you're reading it, okay, I need that variable. Okay, making the 30% down payment. Okay, so down payment. Then it's going to put DP for down payment equals 30%. And then the loan origination fee, 2%. All right. So $450,000, right? Now, here's where they trick you on this. And I'm not going to go too far in this because it's going outside of what I really wanted to do. But here's the thing that you got to know: a down payment is the sales price of the house is $450, but that's not the loan, right? The loan is minus the down payment. The bank is saying we're gonna loan you 70% of what it's gonna take to buy this house, right? So what we need to do is figure out what that is, right? So we take 450,000 times 30%. That's $135,000, right? So what I'm going to do down here is I'm going to create another line and say loan equals I'm going to say loan equals 450,000 minus 135. And what is that? $315. So the loan is $315. So now we figured out the down payment, which is $135, and then the loan origination fee. Now, we wouldn't have taken this 2% out of the $450,000 because that's the sales price. That's not the loan amount. The loan amount is $350. So now we need to figure out what 2% of $350 is. So then we multiply times 2%, and that's $6,300. So down payment here equals $135. The loan origination fee, this is the loan, that equals $6,300. So now we subtract. We just do a subtraction. So let's read the question, finish reading the question. How much will the buyer need to finance, including the origination fee? Let's read that again. How much would the buyer need to finance, including the loan origination fee? So that's going to be the 6,300 plus the 315. So we take the 315 plus the 6,300. That's 321,300. Let's go down here. 321,300. That's the answer. Go back over to our problems. 321,300 is right there. That's the answer. We're good to go. But all we did was the same shit that we did in the other, right? But in this one, we got to know that the down payment should be subtracted from the 450 to get our loan amount, and then that's the number we apply the 2% to. So how many steps is this? Okay, the buyer's purchasing the property for $450,000, making down 30% down payment. That's one step. We got to figure that out. 2 steps. The loan origination fee is 2%. We got to figure out that's 2 steps. How much will the buyer need to finance? We have to figure out what we have to then add the 2% plus the loan amount. That's the 321,300. That's the 3rd step. So this is a 3-step problem. You will not probably get a 1-step problem on the test. You very unlikely will get a 2-step problem on the test. Most of the time, these test questions will be 3 or 4 steps of all little mini questions that we're going to go over. Okay. All right, let's get to the state agency and go over that real quick. Let's get to that. And we'll do about a 30-minute session on that, and then we'll go from there. And this is what I needed to show you. So, here we are, Ohio. And we're going to focus on this right here, part 4. Y'all have it in the book that I sent y'all as well. All right, here we go. Types of relationships in Ohio, or types of agencies, or types of ways you can get in the agency. Remember, I said seller and landlord are interchangeable. Right? Here, permitted agency relationships in Ohio are seller-landlord agency. So either you're representing a seller or you're representing a landlord, which may be one and the same, but if they're renting the property, they're not the seller, they're a landlord. The relationship is between the licensee or the brokerage and the seller or landlord in this relationship. Buyer-tenant. Either you're going to have a buyer or a tenant. Typically, those are interchangeable. The broker would have a relationship with you would have an agency relationship with the licensee, broker, and the buyer. That's what this type of relationship is here. Dual agency, there's that word again. Between a licensee, broker, and the seller and the buyer with written consent. Written consent being the most important part of that. Sub-agency, between the licensees and another licensee's client. Angela, I called you. I asked you, I said, I'm going out of town for 2 weeks. I need you to handle these clients of mine until I get back. I'm gonna designate you to do my job. So you're gonna have a sub-agency relationship. Okay. Now here's the other ones. Split or designated agency. Let's talk about that. When a broker represents both the buyer and the seller as a dual agent, but one licensee in the brokerage is designated to represent the seller, and the other licensee is in the same brokerage is represented the buyer. That is a split, or that is like a dual agency situation. But a designated agency situation is just a broker saying, "Hey, I want you to represent the buyer or the seller." All right. But the broker, remember, the brokerage has dual agency of 2 of their agents in that brokerage. One's representing the seller, one's representing the buyer. The agents have a single agency relationship, but the broker has a dual agency relationship with the seller. Okay. Agents and agency relationship include the relationship that you have with you and your broker. That's typically going to be a general agency relationship. Let's look at that. That's going to be this over here. And I sent y'all these, and now I can show y'all how to use them. Here it is. Look at this. Right here. Broker or salesperson and a client. That's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about, where is it at? Okay, so salesperson and the legal relationship between the salesperson and the broker typically is a general type of agency. You're going to be doing many things under that broker's license. That's a general agency relationship, and that's right here. So your affiliate broker and you have a general agency relationship because you're hired. You're going to be doing many things for that brokerage, or you're going to be conducting a lot of things that for the broker in that type of relationship. Okay. Then what else do we have? We have a broker or salesperson's relationship. Broker salesperson with a client. That's going to be a specific relationship. As a property manager and the owner, that's a general relationship. Lawyer or somebody with a power of attorney is going to have a universal relationship. But your relationship with your broker is a general agency relationship. Okay. So going back to this sheet, all right, so that's the relationship. I would just say the relationship between me and my broker is a general agency relationship. All right, the brokers management level licensees don't even worry about that. That's probably going to be also a general relationship. All right, affiliate licensees who receive confidential information from the agent, that's sub-agency relationship. Affiliated licenses who help establish the agency relationship, that's also a sub-agency type of relationship. Affiliated licensees who are appointed to represent the client with the client's consent, that's going to be like a designated agency. No other affiliated license in the agent. There's no other, outside of these, there's no other affiliated licensee. I'm sorry, no other affiliated licensee is an agent in a relationship. So don't worry about that one. This is kind of confusing. Don't worry about what this is. Just know these two things for the test. If you and your broker have a general agency relationship, y'all are when you get your license, you already have a broker. In this instance, Angela, I think you said you're coming to Brick House. I'm not for sure. I think Jasmine or Angela, one of y'all said that y'all coming to Brick House. So if you're coming to Brick House, when you get your license, you're going to meet with the broker. Y'all going to go over a bunch of stuff, but one of those things that y'all going to go over is an employment agreement, which is just a general contractor or subcontractor agreement saying that I'm going to hold your license and I'm going to allow you to do these things under this agreement. Also, I'm going to if you sell a house, you'll get 80% and I'll keep 20%. That agreement is an employment agreement in a sense, and you are a subcontractor for that broker. Okay, you're literally running your own business at this point. All right. The next thing, and then the second one is the relationship between you and the seller of the property, or you and the buyer. You have a relationship with the seller to do one thing, and that's to sell their property. You have an agency relationship with the buyer to do one thing, and that's to find them a house to purchase. Same thing for a tenant if you were working with someone who wanted to rent it or someone who wanted to rent their property. You have the two things you need to remember is that the two main important relationships that you're going to have 99% of the time is the relationship between you and your broker, and then also the relationship between you and the buyer or you and the seller. All right, which is a single agency relationship. That's a special or specific relationship, and you're hired to do one thing. which is sell a personal house or buy to help somebody find a house to purchase. All right. Now, creating agency, here's some important things. Payment or promise to pay of payment to a licensee does not create an agency relationship. Just because somebody's saying they're going to pay you to do something, you don't have an agency relationship with them. The agreement need not be in writing, but it behooves of you to get it in writing, because if it's not in writing, it's what? Unenforceable, right? It's unenforceable. The agreement may be verbal, but it's going to be hard for you to get a court to acknowledge that. And it may be valid. And once we're going to do contracts, we're going to start contracts next week. And so when we go into contracts, you're going to see all of the things that's associated with a contract that makes it valid. All right. But you need to know, when you're creating an agency, it don't have to be in writing. It could be verbal or in the writing. It can be express or implied. Written agreements must meet requirements. So if you're going to have a written agreement, it must meet certain requirements. All right. All right. So a copy of the written agreement must go to the client in a timely manner immediately. When you send a person a document electronically, they're going to get that copy immediately when they sign it. All right. But back in the day, when we say, for instance, in that scenario where I said you were sitting in the person's living room, normally what you would do is you probably, if you were in someone's living room and you wanted to get the paperwork signed there, you don't say, hey, well, you got to come back to the office so I can give you a copy. You then, what I probably would do is I would probably just go ahead and have them sign everything. And then what I would do is either go back to the office and fax them it, email them that immediately, or I would run up to Kinko's or somewhere and make a quick copy and take it back to the house. All right. And they don't got Kinko's no more. But back then, that's where we would go. They got like a Office Max or a Staples or somewhere like that. That's where you would go to make the copy. Or if they might somehow, now I got a copier right here in my little office that I got a copier. So maybe you have them, you can run home and get a copy, or if they got a copier, you could do it. But you want to make sure to get a copy immediately. All right. No implied agency exists based on providing information regarding marketing or lending, lenders or attorneys. So just because you give them a recommendation like, hey, this is what I do if I would market your property, or this is what you need to talk to this lender, or you need to see this attorney. Implied agency is through your actions. Remember, implied agency is through your actions. So if you're recommending that someone see that how you're going to market a property, or you recommend a lender to somebody or an attorney to somebody, that does not create agency relationship. All right. And then this is the redundancy. We're not going to go over this a whole lot, but this is a good way to remember this stuff. Here's more definitions. Exclusive right to sell, most common. Agent receives commission regardless of who brings the buyer, prevents the client from working with other agents during the contract term. That's the best one. 99.9% of the agreements you get in are going to be exclusive right to sell. Exclusive agency. I'm looking for that word agency because I know when I see that, and this is real simple, the seller may find the buyer and not owe a commission. That's the only person that can sell a house in this type of agency where I don't get my commission. Okay. Open listing may involve multiple agents with only the agent who finds the buyer being paid a commission. And then net listings. Sellers set the price. Seller set price with any amount be above that price going to the agent as compensation for services. Not illegal in Ohio, but it's discouraged because it violates the fiduciary duties. So those are your listing contracts. And I told y'all we were going to go over this. And so this is the buyer's side. So just think these are the seller contracts. These contracts are the contracts that create your agency. Remember that. The buyer agency agreements. These contracts are the contracts that create the agency between you and your buyer client. An exclusive right to represent the contract. Pay close attention to this because you're going to get questions about this on the test. All right. Exclusive right to represent contract is the most common. Buyers may not hire additional brokers. Let's say it again. It's the most common one. It's the best one for the buyer's agent. Buyers may not hire additional brokers. They can't have another person showing them houses over here and working with you over there in an exclusive right to represent type of agreement. Provides compensation for the broker even if the buyer finds a house on his own or through another broker, unless the broker collects commission from another party. And I'll explain what that means. All right. So say for instance, let me finish reading that sentence. The broker may be fired only with permissible cause. The contract term is a months to a year. All right. So let's unpack that. It's the most common one. The buyer can't hire somebody else to represent them. It provides so even if they say, okay, I was riding down the street and I found the house and I want you to represent me. And so let me explain the relationship with this. So you're going to get a buyer. And you're going to go to that buyer and say, hey, we need an agreement. So you might have an agreement just to show them houses and get paid. You might have an agreement to show them houses and walk them through the contractual obligations that they have to buy the house. And you may have to, so you got to talk to them about how you're going to get paid. However you want to structure it, you got to talk to them. And within that agreement, you got to fill that out. Okay. So provides compensation even if the broker finds a house, even if the broker, I'm sorry, provides compensation for the broker even if the buyer finds a house on his own or through another broker. So they can, if you got them under this and they find a house and they're buying a house under another broker, that broker should have asked them, do you have an agency agreement with somebody else? Because if you do, and I find you the house, I'm not getting the commission. All right. Unless the broker collects commission from another party, like the seller. So say, for instance, here's the scenario. Me and you have an agreement that you're going to pay me $3,000 to find you a house. You driving down the street one day on a Sunday and you find a house and you go to that seller's agent. They're doing an open house. You go in and say, I want this house. And then they'll ask you, hey, do you have an agreement with somebody? And you say, yeah, I got an agreement with somebody. They'll say, well, don't worry, because that was if you were to pay them. My seller will will take care of the commission that you owe. And so now there's no your commission, your obligation is not any longer, because you don't have to pay a commission because the seller agreed to pay that commission on your behalf. But if you can't pay that agent at that open house a commission because you already got an agreement to pay somebody a commission, but that doesn't stop the seller from paying a commission on your behalf. And if that's the situation, you then can buy that house in that scenario. All right. And they just can't fire you for no reason. It has to be a permissible cause. All right. And the contract has to be within a months to a year. All right. Now, what is we're going to go to the second bullet point. What is a non-exclusive right to represent? And what I'm telling y'all is to get in there and do more than what we're doing today. You got to find out what these things are. A non-exclusive right to represent: define the broker's duty to the buyer, includes buyer's obligations, provides compensation for the broker for finding a house unless the broker collects the commission from another party. Buyer may hire additional brokers, typically canceled only with specific reasons. So this one is just like, you can work with anybody, right? I'll find a broker, but I can be working with somebody else. Pretty much that's how that differs from the other one. All right. And you just can't fire that person for any, typically can be canceled with specific reasons. It's probably a lot less than the first one. So you need to know that non-exclusive right to represent, that means that person can work with other brokers, and the person that finds them a house is who's going to get the commission from that buyer. Non-exclusive, not for compensation contract. Buyer may hire additional brokers, includes brokers' duties to the buyer, allows cancellation by either party at any time. Broker is not paid. So you probably never get into one of those. But know these and do research on these and figure out how they work. Okay. So you got the exclusive right to represent a buyer, non-exclusive right to represent a buyer, and non-exclusive not for compensation contract. All right. Going into written agreements. Now, this is going a little bit into contracts and law, but written agency agreements, it says to be included in written agency agreements. You have to have an expiration date in agency agreements. Fair housing and anti-discrimination statements must be in that agreement. It must also have a statement about blockbusting, which is blockbust sellers. Remember that. And we're going to go over that when we get to fair housing, but you can't blockbust anybody but a seller. And that's what we used to call panic selling. Like, hey, there's a bunch of minorities moving in this neighborhood. You should sell before your property value go down. Agents actually used to do that. And when I go into the history of mortgages and stuff, when we go to finance, that's going to really, I'm going to show you really how that happened. But blockbusting must include a statement about blockbusting. It must include the HUD equal housing logo in this agreement, extensions and carryover clauses. All right. Let's read that part. Extension carryover clause, listing potential buyers during the agency term and stating the agent is on the commission if such buyer ends up purchasing a home during a specific time period after the agreement expired. What that's is called a protection clause, right? So say for instance, you're the seller's agent and you done showed a bunch of people the house, and one day that you wasn't there, and the buyer shows up to the house that was at an open house a couple of days ago, and they say, well, look, I see you only got about another month to go on your listing. Let's wait till this thing expiring, and you don't have to pay a commission, and me and you can do a backdoor agreement, and now you saved $8,000, right, or $10,000, whatever the commission would have been if they went forward through a sale through a brokerage. Well, the protection clause in there allows that anybody that has seen that house within 30 days after that listing expires, you still get the commission. And that's why you want to keep a log of people who you show the house to. All right. Commission rate and provisions. So you got to have the commission that you're charging in there and how it's going to be split up. What you're going to give a buyer agent if they bring the buyer and what you're going to get. Obviously, you got to have the property information like the parcel number, address, stuff like that. Necessary required disclosures and stuff like lead-based paint, and that they, you have to fill out those type of documents. That's all within there. The agent responsibilities are going to be outlined in this agreement. How we are going to resolve disputes. You got to sign it, and the owner got to sign it, or the buyer got to sign it right here. A copy of the agreement must be furnished to the client in a timely manner after this is signed. Next thing that we're going to talk about is this thing called the Consumer Guide to Agency Relationships. If you look at what they're trying to do, they don't want the public not to understand your role and what you're going to do for them, because that is directly connected to your compensation. Hell, if that's all I knew that you were going to do, I would have never paid you $10,000 to do that. So that's why you want to make sure they understand what you're going to do for them right up front. And here, these are the Consumer Guide to Agency Relationship things. And it's kind of hard for me to really get y'all to understand this section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a Consumer Guide to Agency Relationship once we go over the state section. But there's a bunch of, and what that Consumer Guide to Agency Relationship is a required document that directly tells the buyer or the seller all the different types of agency relationships. All right. That's what the Consumer Guide to Agency, there's a lot of stuff in there. So I'm not going to go over that right now. I urge y'all to look at this because this is a very important document. Besides the listing agreement and the, you're going to have them sign this probably before any other item that they're going to sign, right? Even before the buyer broker agreement, you want them to understand what they're about to get into by signing that buyer broker agreement. So this is probably going to be the first document that you're going to have somebody sign, which is a Consumer Guide to Agency Relationship. All right. And it says license duties to clients and customers. Here's all your fiduciary duties, right? Right here. Loyalty, care, perform the terms of the written agreement, obedience, follow the client's lawful instructions, perform duties in a way that's loyal to the interests of the client, comply with regulations, statutes, rules, comply with the law. That's what that pretty much is saying. Disclosure, disclose material facts to the client without breaking confidentiality. Advise the client to obtain expert advice when appropriate. Accounting, account for all monies and property received in which the client may have interest. Confidentiality, comply with confidentiality requirements unless disclosure is permitted by the Ohio Revised Code. All right. due to the seller. Seek a purchase offer with a price and terms acceptable to the seller. These are your duties to the seller. Present all, now this is important, this will be on the test. Present all purchase offers to the seller in a timely manner, even when the seller declined to sign or didn't receive the agency disclosure statement. Okay, so you pretty much just get, if you get an offer on the seller's house, give it to them. Right? You can't say, okay, well, the house listed for 100,000, you just sent me a $50,000 offer. You still got to give it to them. All right. Answer the seller's questions and provide information about offers, counter offers, and how to fulfill contractual terms. These are your duties. Assist the seller with offers and counter offers. Do not perform any act that constitutes the practice of law. You're not an attorney. You can get in trouble for that. Like I had a young lady ask me about preparing a deed for a client. That's what attorneys do. Attorneys get paid $300 an hour to do that. $250 an hour to do that. Or they may just charge a flat fee to prepare a deed. It's all types of things that you can mess up. That is because, see, if you remember one thing as an agent, and this is something that I always remember, and this is just how the people that taught me, you're dealing with property rights. There's only like the two most important rights you have as a citizen by far. The first and most important is civil rights. Because if you don't got civil rights, you will never get property rights. You got civil rights and property rights. Those are the two most important rights that you have as a person. If you are guiding somebody the wrong way because you're just incompetent or you don't have the skill set to offer the type of legal advice somebody would need, you're doing great damage to that person because you are potentially compromising one of the two most important rights a person can have. And if you understand how sacred property rights really are, and ownership and owning property, you would never do anything haphazardly like try to prepare a deed on behalf of a client. That's not what you do. What I do is, hey, I say, hey, attorney, I'm going to send you some leads. Would you give me a referral fee if I refer you somebody to get it to sign this deed? Maybe you may want to run that by your broker, see if it's illegal or if they'll allow you to do that. But I'm not an attorney. I'm a real estate agent. I'm a realtor. Right. And you can know the law very well, but the problem is with people is they know about 80% of what they need to know about a certain subject. But it's the 20% nuanced stuff that you don't remember or don't know how to do or can't recall that causes the problems. And it's that nuance that'll get you in trouble when you're trying to help somebody with something like, say, for instance, legal things and stuff like that. So don't practice law. Don't try to be a CPA. Don't try to be an appraiser. You can value properties through a CMA, but don't try to be talking about, legal stuff, evaluation stuff that's outside of your competencies, or doing any type of accounting, telling people what tax ramifications and stuff. That's not your job. If you get into that realm, you're gonna voluntarily put yourself into a situation where you may be liable for something. All right. Duties to the seller, clients are not breached by the licensee showing other properties to prospective buyers. So in other words, if you're, say for instance, you're having an open house and a buyer comes in to the open house and you say, hey, this is my client, the seller, and they say, hey, I don't like this house. Would you be willing to show me other houses? Sure, I'll show you a couple houses after their open house. That does not mean that you breach your fiduciary duty with the seller. That client wanted 4 bedrooms. They didn't know this house is a 3-bedroom, or it is a 4-bedroom, but the rooms are smaller. So they say, hey, I like the house. I thought the pictures looked nice on the internet, but this isn't the house for me. Would you be willing to help me find a house, or do you have any other 4-bedroom houses? You don't breach your relationship with your client if you say, with the seller, if you say, hey, yeah, I'll show you other properties. So that's what that means. Duty to the seller are not breached by the licensee showing other properties to prospective buyers or by acting as an agent or sub-agent for other sellers. All right. Obtain the seller's consent before extending a sub-agency to other licensees or offering compensation to a buyer's broker. You want to let them know, like, hey, I'm going to have Angela look over this, we'll help you out finding houses. Is that okay? Or I'm going to have Angela assist me with this listing, and she's going to help us sell the property. All right, and these are some of the duties to buyers right here. There's a bunch of those. Same, it's pretty much the same thing as the seller. Seek a property with a price acceptable terms to the buyer. Answer buyer's questions and provide information about offers, counteroffers, and how to fulfill contracts. Assist the buyer with offers and counteroffers. Present all purchase offers to the seller or the seller's agent in a timely manner, and present all counteroffers to the buyer in a timely manner, even if the buyer declines to sign or didn't receive the agency disclosure statement. All right. Again, do not perform any acts that constitutes the practice of law. Duties to the buyer client are not breached of the license. Same thing is just a thing with the buyer. Duties to the buyer client are not breached by the licensee showing the same properties to other buyers or presenting other clients offers on the same property if disclosed in writing. If possible, to all clients making offers on the same property. So sometimes you might have a buyer over here that like a property that a buyer over there like, and you got to put offers in for both of them. That's a tough situation to be in, but you got to do your job, and you out here to get paid and make money. All right. Confidential duties to the buyer client are not breached by disclosing that other offers are being presented on the same property as long as the offerers and the offer terms are not identified. All right. Duties to a buyer client are not breached by the licensee acting as an agent or sub-agent for other buyers or sellers as long as the dual agency relationship are disclosed to the involved parties. All right. It says obtain buyer's consent before extending agency to other licensees accepting compensation from the seller broker. And then duty to customers, there's no such thing as a customer anymore, really, to tell you the truth. But, well, you can just look at a customer to somebody that you don't have an agreement with. You got to be fair and honest to them, disclosing appropriate information and avoiding misrepresentations. Misrepresentations is one of the other bigger ways that you can lose your license. The whole reason you're taking this test is so you can be a competent real estate practitioner and avoid misrepresentations or just flat out lying or fraud. Provide the consumer guide to agency relationship agreements. That's that one long page that we went over. I'm gonna go over that. Provide agency relationship disclosures. All right. So, waiver of duties. General fiduciary duties to clients may not be waived. So those 6 fiduciary things, you can't say, okay, well, I'm not going to be loyal to you, or I'm not going to obey your lawful orders, or I'm not going to account for monies that you can't waive that, even if the seller wants you to waive them. All right, this includes these things here, the general duties, your general fiduciary duties. It says general fiduciary duties to clients may not be waived. You can't waive those 6 things. Duties specific to the seller client or buyer client may be waived by the client signing the superintendent established waiver of disclosed duties statement, which contains these things here. All right, right here. This is probably not going to be on the test, but termination of agency relationships, know how you can terminate agency relationships. Obviously, the completion of the agreement terms. The buyers perform their duties of the contract. The sellers perform their duties of the contract. There's nothing else to perform. The deal is over. Agency is ended. If the agency agreement expires, so obviously if the date is past the date of expiration, you don't have an agency relationship with that. Destruction of property. If you remember, a listing agreement or a buyer broker agreement is an agreement that you can't assign that. It's a service agreement. I'm going to provide a service for you. I'm going to find you a house or I'm going to sell you a house. Destruction of property. When the property is destroyed, that's what the contract was for. So that's going to terminate the late agency relationship. Loss of property through eminent domain. Eminent domain is the process in which the government can take a property for public purposes. Typically, there's 2 prongs to this. It has to be for public purpose, and it has to be just compensation, meaning that if they're going to take your property through eminent domain, they have to give you market value or just compensation for whatever the property that they're taking. You can't have a property that you could sold on the market for $250,000 and the government taking and they only want to give you 100. All right. But you can terminate agency relationship if the municipality enacts eminent domain. Bankruptcy to either agent or the client. Okay, not necessarily the agent, but the broker. If the broker goes bankrupt, it's that's a wrap. That service agreement terminates, and if the client goes bankrupt, then that's also terminated. The reason why I say the broker is because you can go bankrupt. It's still the broker's listing. All right. Now, mutual agreement. I don't like you. I don't like your services. I don't like you. I don't like how you're not responsive. Say, for instance, you're telling them to clean up the house and remove clutter and stuff like that, and they're not doing it, and you're getting feedback from people that's showing the house, and they're directly saying that the clutter is the reason. You might want to say, hey, you're not doing what I need you to do to sell a house. I can't sell a house with a house like that. I think we should just sever our relationship. And there's a number of other reasons why you would mutually agree to, maybe they thought they wanted to sell and they didn't. Maybe they thought they were going to get a job out of town and they didn't, and they wanted to sell a house. All right. And then renunciation by the age, these down here, you don't really have to do. You can renounce that you don't want to, hold on, let me just, I want to make, and they probably not going to let me do this. Yeah, they not. Let me do this. I want to make sure y'all know exactly what this is. And then we almost done with this. I think this is the last portion of it, but I just want to see what this is. Hey Siri, what is renunciation in real estate? She didn't answer. She didn't answer that question. So, renunciation in real estate is the act of giving up a claim or interest in a property. It can occur in various situations, such as when the heir renounces. So, really, it's just giving up. Now, I don't want to complicate it. You're probably not going to run into this, but it says renunciation is when someone renounces, it's saying that they don't want to do something anymore. Okay. Right here, it says does not want to inherit or they don't want to represent anymore. All right. So let me go to my screen here. All right. Then revocation, and that means to just revoke something. All right. Death or incompetency of either party. If somebody dies, if the broker dies, then that's it. If the seller dies, then that's it. Or if you're incompetent. Loss of the broker's license. Obviously, the broker loses the license, they can't practice real estate in Ohio. We talked about confidentiality. Keep everything private. I don't care even if they tell you, you can tell them. If it's confidential information, keep that quiet. Keep that as quiet as you can. Keep everything confidential. Hold on, let me see something here. Okay, yeah, we almost done. All right, so we already got about another 10 minutes because a lot of this stuff, so we are confidential. Agency disclosures. This is the consumer guide to agency relationship. You've got to tell people what you're doing for them. All right, you got to disclose it to the seller and the buyer. And this through the consumer guide to agency relationship is the document that you're going to use to do that. All right, that's what all this stuff is here. It's kind of redundant because we just went over it above. Disclosure statement. So let me skip this part right here. I'm gonna go down here. No, let me do this. All right, now this is the form that the disclosure statement form. So let me tell you what this means. So there's the consumer guide to agency relationship is you telling your client what you're going to do for them as you're working through it. Now, so say for instance, you get a purchase agreement though, and there's an agent over here and you're the agent for, so let's say the seller. You have to then say, okay, this agent is going to represent the buyer and I'm going to represent you. Do you understand that? They're going to say yes. Okay, this agent is from Keller Williams. I'm from BHR and Associates. Do you understand that? Yes. All right. And I'm representing you, they're representing them, and this and all state. And so all on that form, all of this stuff must be there. All right. And I'm going to show y'all that form as well. But going over this stuff is like a place for the licensee and the parties to the transaction to sign and date. So these are all the things that's required for that document. You're probably not going to get answered a lot of questions, but I'm going to go over the agency disclosure form. That's this, and the consumer guide to agency relationship. The consumer guide to agency relationship is the first thing that you give them. Here's what I'm going to do for you as the buyer's agent. Here's what a seller's agent does. Here's what dual agency is, and those types of things. The agency relationship is actually you're about to get into a purchase agreement, and I need to tell you what the buyer's agent is going to be doing. This document says that you understand what the buyer's agent is going to be doing. You understand what I'm going to be doing. You know where they're from. You know where I'm from, and that's this form right here. And all of these things have to be within that form. That's what that's saying right there. All right. Selling with interest. Let's go over this. Licensees do not have to list their own property through their brokerage unless required by the broker. So that's probably something that you're going to want to talk to your broker about once you pass the test. Hey, if I sell my house, do I have to sell it to you? I can sell it for sale by owner, but if I sell it for sale by owner, I got to let the public know that I'm a real estate agent. Licensee's ownership interest in the property must be disclosed to the buyer prior to signing a contract. So before you sign that purchase agreement, you better have told that buyer that, hey, this is my property and I own it and I'm a real estate agent. All right. A licensee's interest in purchasing a property and the licensee's licensure must be disclosed to the seller prior to signing it. Hey, you're selling your house. I want to buy it, but I'm a real estate agent. And I just want to let you know that before I sign this contract. All right. The licensee's ownership interest in the property must be included in all advertising for the property for sale. You got to let them know. Agent owned. Real estate agent owns this property. I own the property. So remember that some of that stuff will be on the test. That will be on the test. And here's dual agency again. We done beat this horse till it was dead. Just know the most important thing is that they have to consent and it has to be in writing. All right. That's dual agency. And then this thing down here. So there's 3 forms that I'm gonna have to show you, and I'll show you all these probably. I don't know. I don't know when I'm gonna show you all these, but when we go over them, it's 3 forms: the consumer guide to agency relationship, the agency disclosure, and the residential property disclosure form. This has something to do with the property's condition. So the relationship between me and you as the buyer or the seller, and then you have to tell me what's going on with the property, what you've done over to the property since you owned it, or what you know about the property that may be defective. And this is the form that you do all of that stuff with. So I'm going to show you all this form as well. And that's called the residential property disclosure form. The agency relationship, the consumer guide to agency relationship, and this form are all state required forms. So in every packet that you're doing when you're representing the seller, you're going to have the consumer guide to agency relationship and the residential property disclosure form, and and probably the agency disclosure form is going to come when you get ready to get in contract with somebody. So this is a thorough breakdown of the state test. I went over it quick, but we're going to go over this again. But it's a lot of stuff here, and by far this is going to be like 14 questions from here. And so as we go over them and answer questions about this stuff, we're going to try to relate it to these different sections of the test. All right. So this is recorded. Let me stop the recording.